Hey everyone, it's Bigfoot, and I'm going to be talking to you today about the different routes and options that you have with through hiking the Appalachian Trail. Now, in addition to talking about the routes, I'm going to talk to you about the advantages of them, I'm going to talk about the disadvantages of them, and I'm just going to share some experience from myself and past through hikers that can, at the end, really help you make a better decision or be confident about the decision if you've already made one of which route you're going to take while you're through hiking the Appalachian Trail. So starting off, the three routes are going northbound, going southbound, or flip-flopping your through hike. So starting off, let's talk about heading northbound. Northbound is the most common way and direction that you will find on the trail. The advantages of going northbound, first and foremost, are the design of the trail was really meant to hike it northbound. It was meant to hike it northbound, number one, because the challenges that you're going to face along the trail are going to require experience and exposure to different elements, different areas to get ready for the finale, which is the last section of the Appalachian Trail, the New England section. That section, you'll be hiking through the infamous White Mountains and southern Maine. If you've done any research whatsoever, you've probably heard a lot of things about those two areas already. So going through that, you are going to be able to build the strength of your body, you'll be in the best shape of your life, and you'll have the trail experience to get through that section, hopefully unscathed. And of course, the finish, there is no better backdrop than hiking up Mount Katahdin to finish your through hike. Another advantage of going northbound is when you are northbounding, you will have a bigger hiker bubble, which means you're going to be able to make relationships, more relationships with folks. You're going to see more people. You are going to be able to come across situations where that will come in handy, like maybe sharing a room to save some money, or buying food and splitting the cost, things like that, or transportation into town. But anyway, that is one of the advantages. In addition to that, the trail in the very first section is very kind to through hikers that are just getting started. With the amount of towns that are in between each other, they're more frequent. So the through hikers that are not experienced, which most of the folks that are out there are not experienced yet, will get a good chance to be able to learn as they go. If they make mistakes, they're not going to be as critical as they did at the very end. So that is another advantage of heading northbound. And the other advantage of heading northbound is really the weather. So you're going to start, most folks are starting in the very end to beginning of spring, and the conditions, the weather conditions are going to be mild. They will be wet, and it could be cold or very cold, but has an opportunity to really go through that area, the southern Appalachians, when the climate and the weather are on the more mild side. When you go through the mid-Atlantic states, it's going to be hot, and then by the time you get up to the New England section, you'll be probably getting close to the end of summer, or it could be fall time. And anyway, but the weather just plays out well. So those are some of the advantages of hiking the trail going northbound. Now let's talk about the disadvantages. So the disadvantages are really two that stick out very much to myself. Number one, and this really ties into what the advantage is there's a lot of people. It's overcrowded. With the recent movies on A Walk in the Woods and Wild, the trail has gained a lot of popularity, which has drawn a lot of extra people on the trail, and the shelters are really crowded and just causes a lot of nuisance. Now, the most common time that through hikers start is between March 1st and April 15th. The beginning, middle, and end of the month, so the 1st, 15th, 30th, 31st, are usually the most common times of the month for thru hikers to start, and those are going to be the biggest hiker bubbles. But if you are going to the trail to seek solitude and be away from humanity and civilization, it's going to be difficult to do that, at least in the beginning, when you have some of the bigger hiker bubbles. The next disadvantage is the partiers. So with all of these people that are on the trail and a lot of folks that are kind of lured in with the popularity of the trail growing, you're getting a lot of people out there that are there for different reasons than you might be there for. And the big one that stands out to me is the folks that are out there that are partying, doing drugs, having a great time. Now, don't get me wrong. One of the best things about the trail is to have fun. I had a lot of fun hiking the trail, but the reason why I was on the trail wasn't to party, and there's a lot of folks that go there for that specific reason. So you kind of have this hiker bubble of that nature as well that you have to go through, and really that will last the first about 470 miles till you get to Damascus. Once you get to Damascus at trail days, after trail days, people just kind of drop off like flies. But nothing does more damage than the state of Georgia. The state of Georgia is a reality check for most people, and that also has a way of getting rid of a lot of the folks that probably shouldn't be on the trail in the first place. All right, let's talk about going southbound. All right, so the advantages. The first is you're just not dealing with the crowding that you are going northbound. You have a lot less people. And by the time that the southbounders are hitting the northbounders with the hiker bubbles, depending on when they start, a lot of the northbounders have dropped off by that time. So the crowding piece and having room at the shelters and all of that really will look a lot different going and heading southbound. All right, well, what about the disadvantages? So there are a few disadvantages with going southbound. First and foremost, southbound, you're going to have a different timetable. Mount Katahdin doesn't open usually until right around June 1st. So when you're looking at a hike, the average person is going to hike the trail in 5 to 7 months. Well, when you look at that timetable starting in June, you're probably not going to finish till sometime around October to November timeframe. Most of the folks that are going southbound are going to be a little bit stronger hikers, at least I would hope. So they're probably going to hike it a little bit faster than a northbounder, but you're not going to be ending until sometime before the holidays, or maybe even sometime around the holidays. The next thing that you're going to deal with is the challenge. So you are literally going to be thru-hiking, starting at the most difficult section of the trail. There's a reason why when you read up about the whites in southern Maine, why they suggest going northbound. I mean, it is tough. And the skill sets that you learn going through heading northbound, you really can apply when you get into the White Mountains in southern Maine. A lot of folks that start off in Katahdin and heading south, they don't have that skill set. When they go through the 100-mile wilderness, they're bringing 12 days worth of food when they probably may not need to. So they have all this extra weight, which is another issue, is all of this extra weight that they're carrying before they've had their shakedowns are going through the most difficult section. So if you're not prepared with that, you're not in shape, it's probably not a great idea to start in Mount Katahdin and heading south. Another disadvantage is you are dealing with some really crappy weather and conditions. So being up in Maine in the first part of June, you're going to first of all probably hit the black fly hatch. Black flies, if you're not familiar with them, they're basically biting flies. They're absolutely terrible. I hate them, and they're a nuisance. And when you're on the trail, it's hard to avoid them. Obviously, there's things out there that you can do that will help deter them from you, but really they're just a really big pain in the ass. So you're dealing with that. You're also dealing with a ton of mud. I mean, tons of mud. It's wet up there. Everything is melted, and you won't believe how muddy that Maine is. So you're dealing with all those conditions. Most of the southbounders I spoke to were so excited to get the heck out of Maine, and a lot of folks I've talked to said they have no intentions of ever wanting to go back to Maine just because of how crummy that it was. All right. Now, in addition to that, I'll give you a little bit of texture of what I experienced in the trail. When I got up into Vermont, I started seeing my first southbounders. And really, I would say the first bubble that I hit were the ones that were more experienced, that were prepared. But once I got into New Hampshire and the southern part of Maine, where I started getting into the slower hiking bubble of southbounders, and for sure the less experienced southbounders. And I will tell you that there was a lot of folks out there that had no reason to be starting southbound, didn't have any real backpacking skills, and really when after talking with them, wanted just to start southbound, really for the main purpose because they were getting out of school so late, and they didn't want to be heading northbound because by that time there was not as many people heading northbound. So they want to start southbound so they could really have the interaction with all the people and be in the southbound bubble. But seriously, I met quite a few people that had some horror stories. There was one kid actually that was staying in, geez, I can't remember, maybe it was Rangeley or somewhere in Maine, and literally stayed at a hotel for like a week straight because they wanted to quit the trail, but they were so afraid to leave because they told everyone that they're going to thru-hike the trail and they didn't want to disappoint their family. But the thought of them going back on the trail was so scary because of what they went through and how tough and challenging it was that they just couldn't get back up on the trail. So I ran into some folks that got injured pretty badly out in the White Mountains. So anyway, it's just, honestly, think about it. If you don't have any real backpacking experience, you haven't done anything like this, don't start up at Katahdin and go southbound. Trust me, it's just not worth it. All right, which brings me to the last route, which is flip-flopping. So flip-flopping, first of all, is one of the routes that the ATC is really highly recommending. It's highly recommending because it breaks up a lot of the hiker bubbles and resolves a lot of the overcrowding issues. So with flip-flopping, you really can start anywhere. The most common area that people flip-flop will be in Harpers Ferry, West Virginia, and they'll start at Harpers Ferry, West Virginia, and either head south and go all the way down to Georgia, and then flip-flop, go back up to Harpers Ferry and go north, or they might go all the way back up to Maine and then head southbound from Maine all the way back down to Harpers Ferry. But honestly, you can start anywhere you want. I met a lot of people that started right in the Shenandoahs and started to head northbound from Shenandoah all the way up to Maine, and then they were going to flip-flop and go back down to Shenandoah and head south. So it really gives you a lot more flexibility. The advantage to this, so one I already said, is it breaks up a lot of these hiker bubbles so it's not overcrowded. The other thing is you really get an advantage of time. With going northbound, you have to basically, if you want to finish your thru hike and you don't want to do a section hike, you need to be done by about October 1st to the 15th. To ensure that you can finish, you probably want to be done by the 1st of October. Going southbound, because you have to start so late, if you're on the trail for about more than 5 months, you're going to be flirting with getting into winter if you don't want to hike in winter. Now with flip-flopping, you can start, when most folks start, which is in March or in April, and you can hike the more difficult section. Well, actually, if you start in Harpers Ferry, you would be hiking the easiest section first, and then you would hike the more difficult section. Get that out of the way so you really don't have to summit it at a certain time. Come back and hike the last section with no real timetable and having extra time to be able to do that. A lot of folks like to do that way, going northbound from Harpers Ferry up to Maine and then flip-flopping back to Harpers Ferry south, because they want to hike the southern Appalachians and Smoky Mountains in the fall. So that is a big advantage, having the time. All right, and the last advantage is really the terrain. So you start with the easiest terrain, and you get the opportunity to really start to build your trail legs, gain experience, and do all these things before you get up to the White Mountains. From Harper's Ferry up to the White Mountains, you've got about 800 miles. So plenty of time for you to really develop skills, get your trail legs, and get the experience. Uh, so with that, that really is another great advantage of flip-flopping. I will tell you, I met a lot of people that started with northbounding the trail and decided that they weren't going to be able to through hike and finish in time, so they flip-flopped their hike, finished one section, and then came back just to hike whatever section that they missed so that they could extend their time. So lots of advantages with flip-flopping. Disadvantage with flip-flopping really is the hiker bubbles that you're going to see in the beginning are probably going to be very small. You're going the opposite direction if you are starting in Harper's Ferry and heading south than what most people are hiking. If you are starting in Harper's Ferry and heading north, unless if you're going at a very mild pace, you're not going to hit a lot of the hiker bubbles until you get up into the northern part of Maine or the southern part of Maine, or you might not hit them until you actually go and flip-flop back. But you're probably not going to have the same experience that you're going to have northbounding or southbounding with some of the hiker bubbles, unless if flip-flopping starts to become more popular. But again, the Appalachian Trail is really highly recommending flip-flopping just because of all those things that I had mentioned. All right, so that wraps up the 3 different routes and options that you have with where you want to start and where you want to finish. Now let's talk a little bit about how to get to each of these areas. So starting off with Springer Mountain, there's 2 ways that you can get to Springer Mountain. When you're flying into Georgia, Atlanta is your closest city. It's about 80 miles from the start of the Appalachian Trail. If you're taking a Greyhound, I believe you can get to Gainesville. It's about 40 miles to the start. But anyway, to get into Georgia, that's how you would get there, unless if you're driving. All right, so the 2 ways of getting to Springer Mountain once you are in Georgia, the first and most popular is to take the approach trail. It's in Amicalola Falls State Park. And what you're going to do is you're going to drive to the state park, and it is going to be a 8.8 mile hike. You start at about 1,800 foot of elevation, and you're going to hike all the way up to Springer Mountain, which is about 3,800 feet of elevation. So you're going to gain about 2,000 feet of elevation in about 9 miles. That might not seem like a lot, but I will tell you that most of the through hikers that started the trail that I ran into in the first 30 miles that weren't prepared for what they were getting into thought that the approach trail was really, really difficult. As easy as it might sound, and looking at a profile of the approach trail, I will tell you and share with you that a lot of the through hikers that weren't prepared thought that was very difficult for the start. So that's the most common and popular. I did not take that approach just because of time. The other approach, which is the one that I took, was to take USFS 42 around Springer Mountain. It's a gravel road. It takes a little while, to be honest, to get back, and you take a bunch of side roads to get to USFS 42. But you're going to take that all the way up Springer Mountain, park in a parking lot, or be dropped off in a parking lot, and you're going to have to hike up Springer Mountain, which you're actually on the AT at that time. You're going to hike up Springer Mountain, which is a mile. You'll be at the very top, and then you'll backtrack and go back down it. So you will be basically walking a useless mile that you will go back down the trail. But if you are looking to avoid the approach trail, which is 9 miles, that is your other alternative. Myself, I'm going to actually hike the approach trail this year, I believe. I'm going to go down to Georgia. I'll probably talk about one of that in one of my other videos. But so those are your 2 options. But again, most popular folks are going to take the approach trail. Now, going to Mount Katahdin, there's a few things that you need to know about getting to Mount Katahdin. So the closest city of relevance to Mount Katahdin is Millinocket. Most folks will probably be staying in Millinocket the night before. The closest airport to Katahdin, I believe, is Bangor. That's where I left out of, is Bangor. So most folks are going to fly into Bangor if they're not driving, stay in Millinocket, and then they will head up to Mount Katahdin the next morning. Now, when you go up to Mount Katahdin, it's in Baxter State Park. There's lots of rules and regulations. Make sure that you know them. Make sure that you follow them. But if your family or whoever is driving you up there wants to get into the park, they only allow a certain amount of cars in the park at a time. And once it's full, it's done. You can't get back in. So if you are planning on having family and they want to hike up Mount Katahdin with you or something like that, be wary of that. If not, you'll probably be getting some sort of ride from an outfitter or a hostel and dropping you off at Mount Katahdin. So going to Mount Katahdin, obviously going southbound, you're going to hike up. It's 5.2 miles up to the top of Katahdin. It's probably one of the most difficult climbs, one of the best climbs of the entire AT. And then, of course, you'll get to the top, and then you'll start hiking back down. If you are flip-flopping, more than likely you're probably starting Harper's Ferry. So you're going to want to fly into Washington, D.C., and then you'll take a train over to the Harper's Ferry to start your flip-flop. So that really kind of wraps up everything. The last thought I want to leave with everyone is please make sure that you register for your through hike. Whether you're going northbound, you're going southbound, or flip-flopping, the ATC is really pushing hikers to try to register. If you do register, you're going to get a cool little AT tag that you'll put on your backpack, and it will signify to other through hikers that you are through hiking. But they're really just trying to understand how many hikers, what the bubbles are going to look like, and at this time they're not regulating anything yet, but it will really help out. It is volunteer only, so you don't have to register, but if you're wanting to do the right thing, please register. You can go to the ATC's website, appalachiantrail.org, and just follow the links, and you'll be able to register there. So that wraps up everything. I hope this was helpful for you. If there's any other questions that you have regarding what I covered today, please leave them on your comments below, and I will answer them. If not, I will see you and everyone else back here just a little while to go through my next topic, which is going to be about spending money on the Appalachian Trail. Where are ways that you can save, and what are just some best bets I learned and picked up through my experiences and through others on the AT. So come back and check it out.